Hi everybody, I wanted to do a quick video about supply chains. What is a supply chain and why we're hearing so much about supply chains on the news at the moment? Well, obviously, supply chains bring us what we need for our everyday lives. Everything from our cornflakes in the morning to our medical supplies and everything else. And at the moment, our supply chains are being impacted in ways we've never seen before. Obviously, a global pandemic has interrupted supply. It's also interrupted our ability to get personnel to drive the supply chains that we have. Also, we've had some extraordinary events, such as the Suez Canal being blocked for a number of weeks, which obviously had huge impacts too. So all of these events are bringing supply chains into the focus and into the mainstream media. So what is a supply chain was the question. And the honest answer is it's nothing new. We've had supply chains really since the dawn of time, we started to supply goods for currency, we've had supply chains. For instance, bringing goods back from overseas countries such as cotton and wheat and things like that. Even the Egyptians were feeding the Romans. That's a supply chain. Ultimately, a number of entities involved in bringing things to an end point for its consumption. So, we think about what a supply chain is, and a supply chain only being as strong as its weakest link. If you think about a chain, obviously all the links are holding together. If you happen to break one of those links, then obviously the thing that you're pulling at the end of the chain isn't going to move when we move the right-hand side. And the same is true of supply chains. Also, many people refer to these as value chains. Why do we refer to it as a value chain? Well, at the beginning of the chain, we have little value and we're adding value to it as it moves through the supply chain, ultimately getting the value of the product to the end customer or consumer to actually use the thing that's actually arrived there. So a value chain and supply chain are often used interchangeably in terms of their terminology. So let's think about this in terms of data and systems. Obviously, my name is Steve Chittenden. I should introduce myself. I work for SAP here in Australia, and obviously supply chains are something I'm passionate about in terms of getting our systems up and running to cover. So if you think about the data that flows through a supply chain, it's really important to think about it in the same way as a chain. We need to get that data in to the system. And of course, if we have a break in that data, we also have a break in our supply chain. So suddenly we have information coming in, but when the information is gone, then we don't see the other part of the supply chain. Many organizations have good ERP systems, just like SAP, the good ERP system, and internally we can see what's going on. So we can see when we manufacture something, and we can see when we can actually ship it out of our own warehouse. But before then, and after then, those other links of the chain from a data point of view are often not there or lost. We don't see the raw materials coming from our supplier. We don't see the customer actually consuming the product and things like that. So we need to work on this and actually get this better. So what makes a good supply chain? Well, obviously there are many, many factors in play here and many, many characters in play as well in terms of other third parties and things. But if we boil this down to a few main points, there are some things that make what we call a good supply chain. It's sustainable and safe. What does that mean? Sustainable in terms of obviously reducing carbon footprint, but other factors too, making sure it's safe for our workers and everybody else, and also making sure that it's ethical in terms of the safety of the people who are actually making the goods and providing the raw materials as well. We need to make sure it's secure and robust. And this is where we've seen things in the news at the moment with things like rapid antigen tests and other PPE equipment not being available and things like that. Making sure it's secure in terms of the data and also the availability of the goods and robust in that it doesn't break easily in terms of that chain being strong for all the points across it. And finally, of course, visible to all stakeholders. Why is this important? Never before have people wanted to see information about supply chains like they do now. I'm sure you've all used online shopping and things like that, and we get the product coming through and we can see when it's going to arrive and it's all good and those types of things. These are the kinds of things that our customers want to see and be able to look at in terms of where are my things right now and when are they going to get there. Also, from our vendors sending products, what do we need to send to our customers? So all those different visibility factors or alerts and things like that are all really vital to a good supply chain and really are expected from our customers these days. So how do we do that? Well, as I mentioned, many customers have a good ERP system, and the ERP is really the heart and lungs of any organization. So what it's doing is, of course, we're making things, we're shipping things, our materials requirements planning is saying, hey, we need more things, let's order them in, and so on and so forth. So the heart and the lungs is there, it's beating, it's doing what it needs to do. But the challenge with that is, it doesn't really know what to do outside of its own body. So if you think about an organization, manufacturing and shipping, they know what's happening inside the ERP, but outside the ERP, we don't really see much. And this is where we can extend that to include integrated business planning, both as a process and as a system and solution from SAP. So what the brain allows us to do is to look wider, to look at more organizations, to look at scenario planning. Do I need to beat the heart faster and the lungs breathe heavier because I'm running? Or why don't I jump in a car instead? Those types of things. So what that allows us to do then is to take the ERP information and other information from other stakeholders and other parties and allow us to then describe what's actually happening so we can see easily what's going on, not just inside our own ERP, but of course across multiple stakeholders and organizations. We can also then predict what's going on through machine learning and algorithms to see what we should do and how can we do things better, and of course prescribe what we should do. So just because we predicted it happened, did that actually take place, yes or no? And that's where we can use things like our supply and response to, at a document level, change manufacturing orders and to change stock orders from place to place and things like that. And ultimately, what that allows us to do then is to start getting end-to-end visibility and alerting to telling us when things aren't happening as they should. So think of IBP as the brain and the ERP as the heart and the lungs of the system. We've got an ERP, we can see when we've made something, when we're shipping it, but we need to be more intelligent about that and see outside our own world. So how do we do that? We think about what IBP can do for us. Obviously, we go everything from a supply plan, manufacturing plan, inventory plan, deployment plan, and a demand plan. We can bring all that data together in one place, which is brilliant. Then we can mash that against our finance plan, our sales plan, and our marketing plan and become strategic in it and make those better decisions to ensure that a good plan is in place to do that. So that allows us to get visibility and planning across the entire supply chain, not just like materials requirements planning does. We need something now, let's reorder it. So what about everybody else? Well, there are many, many players in the supply chain, as you know, third-party solutions, third-party suppliers, warehousing companies, shipping companies, and this is where we talk about networks. What's a network? What's the difference? Well, think about Tin Can there. With normal B2B technology, what we want to do, of course, is set up a connection to a supplier or to a third-party carrier. Traditionally, we'd set up an interface, and then if we want to send a document or change a document, or we want to send something to a new third party, we have to create a new tin and wire set up between them. So that's why we started to introduce networks, which are a bit more like your mobile phone. You join the network by having a phone number. You don't have to have a telephone exchange in your own house. You just have a network connected to your phone. You sign up to that network with a contract, and then you can start to talk to as many people as you like. When new features come out, like photos and things like that, you don't have to rebuild anything. You just take advantage of those features across the network. And that's why, obviously, SAP is investing heavily in networks to allow us to bring multiple organizations together to share that data and make it useful. But there's no point having that data unless you can use it in a meaningful way. And this is where we can obviously uniquely use SAP to bring that data together to see exactly what's happening. I often get asked when I'm working with customers, how come I can't get the Uber experience or the Domino's Pizza experience with my goods moving through SAP? And my answer to that is it's very easy to track a single pizza coming to your house because you've got one person looking at a single pizza coming to your house. But if you have hundreds of thousands of parts or materials across multiple locations worldwide, it becomes a different prospect. What we need to do there is to obviously use networks and bring the data together into our HANA in-memory database for it to do the intelligent stuff and be constantly checking across all of those items. It's easy for me to track one pizza coming to my house. It's not so easy for me to track hundreds of thousands of items across multiple locations. And this is where we need to get that data from the network and allow our intelligent systems to tell me through alerting and machine learning what's not happening and where I need to concentrate on fixing those items. And that's the difference between a single tracking item, of course, and an enterprise. And what I call enterprise tracking is how we actually track across the full enterprise. So our business networks allow us to do that because we can take that information as a shipper or a carrier, or if I'm in a warehouse, bringing all this data together, but not just from our own network, from other networks as well. And there are obviously networks we partner with, and bringing all this data together so our suppliers can see what's going on, our freight forwarders can see what's going on, so on and so forth. Now, let's think about the customer side here for a second, because we talked a little about 3PLs and vendors and things like that. And how do we actually track what's going on? So the evolution of tracking is really interesting if you think about it. And there are many pioneers, working out there to make this tracking better. If we think about that, tracking used to be inside our own system. It was transactional, excuse me. So we could see inside our own ERP, we've receipted something, we've made something, and we've shipped something. And that's what ERPs do. They're fantastic at it. They can see what the stock holding is and how much we're going to use. But what we want to do, of course, is to bring that against our transactional and location-based tracking. And this is where our customers are driving us to say, hey, I want to know where things are. Our vendors are saying, hey, I want to know, when you need stuff and things like that. So that's where we can start to bring it from a product or material level, where is it and what's going on with it. But it goes further than that, of course, is we want to start to introduce our customer vision of tracking. So we can very easily do that within our own solution space inside our ERP system and things like that. But we want to give the customer confidence and conformity of that tracking so they can also see where their items are too. The next level of evolution is what we call impact analysis on movements. And this is where, if something is not happening as it should, I want to know about it so I can actually do something in there. So what this allows us to do is to stop business issues or even logistics issues becoming problems. So for instance, if I know that a truck has had an accident, or I know there's a major weather event, or I know that some materials are not available, or a purchase order hasn't been placed in time and things like that, I want that system to tell me which customers are going to be impacted by that so I can mitigate it, and obviously it doesn't become an issue for my customers. So that's really the customer side of things. They want to be able to see where things are, but from an organization point of view, we want to do impact analysis to ensure customer satisfaction. And the last area of this is really the state of the art. And this is where we start to really bring tracking into the full enterprise so we can see everything across the system and everything else, and that's our organizational, or what we call enterprise tracking. And that's really what SAP brings to the party, is all those things below, but allowing us to instigate that across the entire organization. So we have an enterprise level tracking solution for everybody, both your vendors, your customers, internally, and so on and so forth. Now, I urge you to ask you a question. Where do you think your customers are, or where do you think you are within that evolution of tracking? So think of some of the projects you've worked on and see if you can place them into some of those different levels there, and where do you want to get to? Often when I ask that question, there's a lot of work to do to actually get there in that space. Many people think that transactional external tracking is as far as they want to go, but of course there's far more to this which we can bring to the party. So let's take it back a bit and let's talk about a supply chain, where we started. So what is a supply chain? Well, here I've got a basic diagram of a simple supply chain, and we've got some items here, my little box sitting with a barcode on. I've already got some receipted in here as well, sitting in a consolidation area. So a supply chain is really bringing together different entities, all working together for a common goal to get product from the initiating point to the end receiver and the use of it. And there are many, many points that things can happen across that. Obviously, a vendor or a supplier, this might be raw materials that are actually shipped that can often come from a third-party source. And often they will be sent directly to a customer warehouse for then obviously to be used. In some cases, they'll be sent to a 3PL first, and the 3PL will actually bring these down and actually send them. It could be through what we call a hotshot, or a fast movement by plane and things like that, or it could go through the full supply chain through consolidation, distribution, etc. It really depends on how the supply chain works and how we want to bring that together. But ultimately, we have multiple entities all working together to get this goal done. Now, what we want to try and do, of course, is bring this control tower idea into play, which looks at the entire supply chain so I can see what's going on across everything. And we want to give feedback and a feedback loop. Sorry, I'm standing in the way of my feedback loop here. We want to give that feedback loop all the way back to make it a genuine chain, continuous movement of data flowing through. So the blue line here is representing data flowing through to the various entities, such as our vendors. After we've been using the items that we've been sent, we want to be able to tell the supplier what is our future demand going to be and what we're going to need. And this helps secure the supply chain because it allows our vendors to know what we're going to need. That consumption actually becomes their demand plan in the future. So a true supply chain is always circular and continuous. But of course, there's a lot going on there. And when we talk to CIOs and CTOs and all those guys about this, often it's just, this is all just too hard. There's too much going on. And that's really where SAP comes into this to really help bring this to play. If you think about the supply chain we just talked about, SAP has solutions across all of these different spaces. We've got all the bases covered. We have our different modules of SAP, and when I say modules, they are genuinely part of the same solution across different use cases. So for instance, if I work in a warehouse, I use Extended Warehouse Management. If I'm a planner, I use IBP. But the systems are all talking to each other, all ensuring that we have that end-to-end process covered across one end-to-end solution because our supply chain is also end-to-end. And importantly, of course, our control tower, talking to transportation management natively, talking to our ERP natively, so it knows exactly what's going on. We're not having to build thousands of interfaces. There's over 200 interface points all pre-built and working together. I don't even like to call them interface points. I like to call them interaction points between our ERP and our control tower to see exactly what's going on. And of course, our outside world, we've got our network now where many carriers have joined the network and can send information to the network, so they don't even have to tell us who it's going to. The network data is just consumed, which is fantastic. So what that ultimately allows us to do is to have one solution which brings together all our different enterprise areas to allow us to become an intelligent and sustainable enterprise using our intelligent and sustainable supply chain. Now, some of the underlying technologies behind that, of course, are our business technology platform. What is that? Well, it's our platform that sits on the cloud, which allows us to run native integration, bring new apps into play, and obviously data analytics and machine learning and things like that. We've also got an enterprise resource management level. We've got our spend management, we've got our human capital, but underneath that are our business networks and our planning cloud solutions. So IBP and of course our logistics business networks and our Ariba networks, bringing together all that information. And from a business process point of view, we already have pre-built industry-specific end-to-end processes. So all of our software is built to bring together those business processes for chemicals, for agriculture, and all those different types of businesses, mining, etc. All those business processes pre-built so they fit in exactly with our solution, so we can bring all of that together. Ultimately, SAP is making a better supply chain to allow us to have a sustainable and safe supply chain. We know where things are coming from. We're doing it in the most environmentally friendly way, and we can actually see how much we're using in terms of CO2 and things like that because we have one supply chain sitting in one solution. So we know exactly where things are being used. We're not double accounting for carbon and things like that. We also have a secure and robust supply chain by sending back our supply requirements to our suppliers. They can tell us, yes, I'm able to do that. We can also make it robust by bringing in all the data and seeing when things are happening. And of course, being able to visible to all our stakeholders, everything from our internal users to our customers and our suppliers, bringing our information and our goods to us, all in one space, all in one system. So that's what makes a good supply chain. What is a supply chain? It's a series of links bringing it together. Obviously, we can do that under one solution, end to end in SAP. And if you have a look at some of my other videos on YouTube, you'll see some point solutions there, which actually show you some of those parts of the supply chain individually. But of course, the purpose of this video is to explain that all of those parts all work together to make a very strong linked chain all together, to all pull as one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video.